Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Colourpop Wine and Only collection. Honestly, it's been a while since I've been excited about a collection because Colourpop just releases a lot. I feel like it's sort of impossible to be genuinely excited for every single one. But when I saw this collection, I was really excited because I love and adore these types of tones. Although Colourpop has released a similar color story in the past, I can't help but be excited to see a 9-pan monochromatic one. So we're going to talk about those comparisons today. We're going to talk about my thoughts on the entire collection, swatches, and then I also did 3 looks with the palette. And I do want to note before we get started that Colourpop did send me this in PR, but that will never change my opinion. This video isn't sponsored. I just want to let you guys know what was gifted to me in PR. But with that being said, if you guys are interested in my thoughts on the new wine collection, then please continue watching. So first, let's talk about the eyeshadow palette. This is called Wine and Only, their Wine Berry 9-pan monochromatic palette. It comes in their plastic packaging with the mirror inside, and this is $12 US. And inside the palette, you will receive 3 matte shadows, 2 sequin shadows, and 4 metallic. So I think there is a good ratio between matte and shimmers. And then also all these shadows will run to the medium deep side. So in result, you will get a lot of deep smoky eye looks. I don't think you will be able to get a very natural look from this if you were to use it alone. If you were to use it with a companion palette, then maybe so, but this palette runs extremely deep and I love that. And that's what I really love about this entire collection actually, is how deep it runs, because it just makes it so much more inclusive. If you have a deeper complexion, then I think all of these shades will be useful to you. I've been reviewing Colourpop consistently for probably the last 4 years now, and I honestly can't remember the last time they have released a collection that ran this deep. Usually there are deep palettes, but there are a lot of like light transition shadows in there, but I feel like with this collection, even down to the blushes, everything goes extremely dark, and I love that. And in saying that, if you do have a lighter complexion, or if you have a complexion like mine, light to medium, I still think this is quite wearable. All of the shades performed so well. Like when it comes to deeper colors, especially deeper reds, they can be quite patchy, and especially when it comes to matte shadows, but I had no issues with any of these at all. They blend out so easily and so well. And that's the thing with Colourpop's reds. I feel like they perform really well. I'm going to talk about some comparisons soon, but with their other red palettes that have deeper plums in there, I didn't have any issues with that either. I will say though that there is a lot of crossovers when it comes to the mattes. What it looks like in the pan doesn't necessarily translate on the eyes. They kind of all look the same. I feel like all my 3 looks, they look like the same look. They don't look that different. Even though I did completely different techniques in each 3, I feel like there's a strong crossover, but that's what happens sometimes when you have a very monochromatic palette. This is definitely entering my top 10 of my monochromatic palettes for sure. I think it's just really enjoyable to use when you want a very deep, sexy, smoky look, and I feel like it's very wearable and it's easy to pull off. I feel like that's probably the easiest color story to go. Like a black smoky eye would probably be the most intense, and then a purple. I feel like reds is like the way to go if you want to create something very dark, glam, grungy. I will talk about some of my comparison palettes. So I'm going to show you palette comparisons and also swatch by swatch comparisons, because I know some people love palette comparisons, some people love swatch by swatches. So I'm just going to give you both. I'm just going to talk about the palette ones, and then I'll just put music over the swatch by swatch. So the 2 palettes that I have that I want to compare it to is the Whatever palette that released in 2019 and the All That palette that released last year as their Valentine's Day collection. I think when you look at the palette directly, I will say the most comparable one is All That, but when I created my looks with Wine and Only, I really got Whatever vibes. I don't know if that really makes sense. You guys can see the swatches and see, and I'll kind of break it down and kind of guide you through which one is better for you to purchase if you didn't have any of these. You are in the market looking for some really rich wine, deep red shadows, and you go onto Colourpop's website, these are the three that's probably going to pop up and spark your interest. So we first have the Whatever palette, and I think the Whatever palette is great if you just want a couple of deep red and winey colors, but you don't want to dive too deep into that. I think Whatever is great because you do get those really intense red wine colors, but you also get some golden and more neutral colors to play with. So I feel like this just gives you a bit of wine and a bit of your everyday shades that you can wear. And then let's move into all that. If you have a lighter complexion, then maybe this palette will be a little bit better for you because the top row is extremely light and those can work as transition shadows. It's a little bit too many light shadows for me personally. Maybe one or two I would be happy with, but you do get those lighter tones that the new Wine and Only one doesn't have. But do keep in mind that there are two pressed glitters in here, so if that's something of concern, then you just want to keep that in mind. And then lastly, we have the new Wine and Only. Even if you have a lighter complexion, this still is very workable. I'm just saying that a lot of the looks is going to be very deep, whereas all that you can make it a little bit more subtle than Wine and Only. Wine and Only will be cheaper because it is a 9 pan and get no glitters in here. So I think there really is something for everyone at this point. It really just depends on you and your preference. So hopefully that little breakdown guide can help you out. The other question I feel like you guys might have is, if you have these two palettes, do you need this one? No, you don't. I feel like the looks that you get from this is very, very similar to the looks that you can create from these two palettes. And another question I feel like I might get is, out of the three, which one do I like the most? For me right now, I will still have to go with the Whatever palette, but I do see Wine and Only becoming a favorite. I don't really reach for all that much. I think it's the glitter that throw me off, and there's a lot of light transitions that I don't really use, that I'd rather just pick up my Whatever palette. And then next in the collection we have two Super Shock shadows, and you can get these for $12 US as a duo together. I think if you are picking up the Wine and Only palette, you don't need these two shadows because I feel like there is a crossover with the metallic shadows that are already in the palette. They look too similar that I don't think you really need to buy both because it's just going to be extra product and extra money for you guys. Of course, the Super Shock and the metallic formulation is very different, but the color is extremely similar, that I feel like it was kind of unnecessary to add these Super Shock shadows. If I could change anything, I probably would have added like a Luxe Velvet Liquid Lipstick duo of some really rich, deep wine red lip colors. I think that would have fit the collection much more, like lip products instead of more eyeshadows, but that would just be me. I think that was an opportunity missed from Colourpop by adding in some really deep like wine red lip colors, but nonetheless they are pretty and I do like them. I don't have any Super Shocks like these in my collection, so there won't be any comparisons, so it does add something different into my collection, but I do feel like there is a crossover with the palette. And next up in the collection we have three Super Shock blushes, and these are $8 US each. And like I mentioned before, the main thing that I love about this collection is how deep it runs, and I haven't seen blushes from Colourpop run this deep. Maybe they have released them individually and not in collections, because I usually review collections and not individual products. Maybe, but really from the past 4 years that I've been reviewing Colourpop, I have not seen blushes that go this deep. I think my deepest blush that I have from Colourpop was from Shayla's collection, and it wasn't even this dark either. Like, they were more on the brighter side, and if you're like me, of a lighter complexion, you might see this and be intimidated. Don't be, because I think they did a really great job of picking out Super Shock cheeks, because these are extremely buildable. But you can just take a sponge and take a little bit and just add a tiny bit on your cheeks, and it won't be dark on you at all. But if you have a deeper complexion, obviously you can take more and build that up. So like this one, I was so surprised. Like this one, the deepest one, Cheerio, I was so sure that it was going to be way too dark on me and I was just going to look stupid, but I really loved how it turned out. Just taking a little bit on the back of my sponge, applying it to my cheeks, it looks amazing. This one here called Cruel Intentions does remind me of Growth Flirt a little bit, just like the undertone, but this one definitely of course pulls a little bit more red. Growth Flirt pulls more to the pinky side. And the blush I'm wearing today is called Brute Flute. This one is the pearlized finish, so it is a satin. It has a bit of a sheen to it, and as you can see I have sort of like a built-in highlighter. I'm not wearing any highlight, that is just the blush, and I think this would work really well as maybe like a blush topper. So I think all three really did add something unique into my collection. I don't have anything like this really, and I just love how versatile they are and how many skin tones I can see it on. So I really love these. I think these would probably be the highlight for me personally. And then I also got sent the Soul Body Shimmering Dry Oil in the shade Sangrita. I always say that the shimmering dry oils, they all look quite similar on the skin, just because once you squeeze it out and share it out, you only really see the glitters, but I feel like this one could be a little bit different and a bit deeper, so I can see this one again on a deeper complexion, and that's just what this collection is pushing out, is products for a deeper complexion, which I love. And then the last product in this collection, they came out with a BFF liquid liner, and that is $8 US, but I did not receive that in my package, but it does look like a really beautiful deep wine liner. Alright, so that was pretty much my review on the wine collection from Colourpop Cosmetics. Hopefully you guys found the review, the swatches, comparisons, everything like that helpful. But now let's move into the 3 looks. Alright you guys, so hopping into the first look, I'm gonna start off with the shade Muller Over, and this is going to be our transition and base color, but the shadow itself is pretty dark and intense, so it can be quite intimidating to start off with this shadow, because usually we would go in with something a little bit more lighter as our transition, but I want to go in with the shade first and start stamping that onto my lid space, and then I'll slowly blend that up in towards my crease. I do go in with a different blending brush to help blend that up towards my brow bone and also towards the outer corners, but because the shadow is going to be the base color, you want to take your time with the step because it's the shadow that you're mainly going to see, so we just want to get that well blended out. Take your time. I go in with so many different brushes, clean brushes, just to really get this blend out and blown out, but I also take this onto my lower lash line as well. I'm going to sweep that from the outer corner right to the inner corner. Same concept, we just want the shadow to be the base and literally everywhere and just very blown out, and that's going to give us that smoky effect. Next, I take the shade Vinter, and I'm going to start packing this shadow onto my lid space first. I'm going to mainly focus it there actually, just to get the most pigmentation there, and then towards the crease area I'm going to use more like windshield wiping motions to get that blended into Muller Over, which was the previous shadow that we used, and you'll slowly start seeing this like gradient smoky effect, and I just love how this looks. Like this shadow blends so well, so I also take that shadow onto my lower lash line as well, but I'm going to be using this shadow to define my lower lash, so I'm using a flat brush to really press this up against my waterline. Now I am taking the Super Shock shadow in the shade Wine It Down from the collection, and I'm going to use my ring finger and I'm going to place that on the center of my lid first, and then I'll diffuse that out all over my lid pretty much. This is optional, you don't have to go in with the Super Shock. You could leave it as an all matte smoky eye, and I already love that on its own, but I want to showcase as many products as I can in my video. But I do think it's a really nice pairing. And now just taking my black liquid liner, I'm going to be creating a wing, and I'm going to be smoking that wing out with a black eyeshadow. And then I'll be taking the creme gel liner in the shade Joyride, and I'm going to use this to tightline my entire bottom waterline. Popping on my false lashes, I am wearing Honey from Petite Cosmetics. Alright you guys, so this is the first look completed. We are starting off super glam and grungy, but I love and adore this look so much. It reminds me of one of my most favorite looks that I created with the Whatever palette last year. No, okay, maybe last year, 2019. I absolutely adore it. If I was to create like a very intense smoky eye, I would go for these kinds of burgundy and plum. I just think it makes the eyes look so sexy, like something about these tones. I'm obsessed, so I hope you guys enjoyed this first look. Alright, now onto the second look. I'm gonna start off with the shade Major Chianti, and this is going to be our transition shadow and base color. Again, just like the first look, this shade is actually quite deep, so we're just gonna focus this more onto the lid space first, keeping the product a little bit lower, and then slowly blending that up towards the brow bone, also towards the outer corners. I also take this shadow onto my lower lash line as well. I'm just going to sweep that from the outer corner right to the inner corner, and making sure at the outer corner point you are connecting the shadow, so that way your eyes can look a little bit more rounded with the shadows connected. Then I'm going to go into the shade Muller Over, and I'm going to start packing that on at the outer corners of my eyes first, and then I will actually bring all of that shadow all over my lid. This step is going to make the look a lot like the first look. It's just going to look like a very intense smoky eye, but I promise you once we do the cut crease, the whole eye look will change, but it's going to look quite similar and it's sort of the same technique. You just want to get the intenseness on the lid space and in the crease area. Then I'm going to go into the shade Grape Full, and I'm going to be doing exactly the same thing. I work that in at my outer corners first, and then I pretty much sweep the entire shadow all over my lid space, just getting the most dark intenseness. In the pen, it actually looks like a dark brown to me, but once it's on the eyes, it is a very deep plum shadow. And a lot of those little micro glitters that are in the shadow does disappear once you pack it on, and it does work more as a matte eyeshadow. But I also take this shadow onto my lower lash line as well. I'm just going to press that up against my waterline just to make the eyes more cohesive. Then I'm actually taking my P. Louise eyeshadow base. You can go in with concealer. This is just what I have on hand. I'm going to start creating my halo cut crease. So I'm going to focus most of the product at the center of my eyes, and then I will slowly go up to my crease line. I go a little bit above my crease, so that way when I look up and my eyes are open, you can still see the shadow peeping through, and there's going to be no transfer as well. So I do go in with a very fine paintbrush to really define that crease line right at the center. I'm then going to take the Super Shock shadow in the shade Muse. I'm going to stamp that on with my finger first because I feel like that's the best way to apply Super Shock shadows. I will then go in with a brush to maneuver and get the placement right. I will bring that all the way up to the crease line where our base was. Then I'm going to take the shade Blanc, and I'm going to place this right at the cut crease line, like right underneath that, because this is the lightest shadow in the palette. I want that cut crease line to really be highlighted, so that way the cut crease can be brought forward, if that makes sense. So that way the contrast is much deeper and the cut crease is more obvious. And now I'm just taking my black liquid liner. I'm going to use this to line my lash line. I do go in with the black eyeshadow to help smudge that liner out. And then I'm going to take my creme gel liner in the shade Charmer, and I'm going to use this to tightline my entire bottom waterline. And then lastly, I'm popping on my false lashes. I am wearing Boudoir Light from House of Lashes. Guys, so this is the second look completed. It's been a while since I've done a cut crease or a halo cut crease to be exact. It's been a very long time, but I love how it turned out. I love how intense and grungy the look is, so I hope you guys enjoyed this second look as well. So now we're on to the final look. I'm gonna start off with the shade Sip Sip, and this is going to be our transition shadow. So looking in the palette, this looks like the lightest shade, and I thought I could work this as a transition, but actually once translated on the eyes, it's actually a lot deeper. So I'm gonna be doing what I did in the previous looks, where I'm gonna focus most of the product onto my lid, and then I'll slowly blend that up into my crease and towards the brow bone, just because the shadow is quite dark. So just working with the shadow like this, just like the previous looks, and I'm also going to take that onto my lower lash line as well, just sweeping that from the outer corner right to the inner corner. Then I'm going to move into the shade Major Chianti, and I'm going to use this shadow to deepen out the outer corners, just using circular motions. We want to start getting the outer corners very, very dark. Then I'm going to take the shade Grateful, and I'm doing exactly the same thing, taking that to my outer corner to start deepening out the outer third, just using circular motions. But with Grateful, I'm going to focus this a little bit lower to my lid space, but I feel like working in baby steps, you do get that best gradual blend, and this is the finishing touch. I do take Grateful onto my lower lash line as well. I'm going to press this up against my waterline. I'm going to start it from the outer corner and into the middle of my lower lash. Then I'm going to take the shade Play to Wine. I'm going to focus this at the inner third of my eyes. I'm going to blend that up into my crease area, just getting this really diffused out. I do go in with my Urban Decay Moondust eyeshadow in the shade Space Cowboy, and I just use a little bit of this and I dab that on top of Play to Wine just to add a little bit more sparkle, because I felt like Play to Wine was a little bit too metallic and I wanted something a little bit more sparkly, so I just added that. But then I'm gonna go ahead and take my black liquid liner. I'm gonna use this to, of course, line my lash line and also create a wing. I go in with my black eyeshadow to smudge and extend that wing out, and then I'm gonna pop on my false lashes, and I am wearing Honey from Petite Cosmetics. Alright you guys, so this is the final look completed. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think out of all three looks, this one is definitely the most subtle out of the three. It's still quite glam, but I think out of the three, it's the most subtle. And I love the final outcome. I love how red and cherry it pulls. And I really do hope you guys enjoyed this last look. Alright you guys, so those were the three looks. Let me know which look out of the three was your favorite down below. Like I mentioned in the review, that they do sort of look the same, but I would love to hear your feedback anyway, and which technique did you like the most. If you guys did enjoy this review and found it helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up for me. I would appreciate it so much if you did. It also does help my channel and my videos out a lot as well. But yeah, with that being said you guys, that is going to conclude today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!